to me a bit more about that story.
Okay, hold on a second. Oops.
So what,
Is it-
you were in their studio apartment being interviewed?
Yes, a friend of mine decided that he wanted to have an interview show, so he built a replica elevator in his apartment,
Okay.
and he like went on eBay and got like Otis elevator parts from the 20s and built this whole set. And then he had a doorman uniform that he that he had gotten from his old job, and he just got random people to come to his house and interview them. It was just people off the street or
Yeah.
list or something, or and just yeah, he just chit chatted with them and then did these really sweet little interviews with them. I thought it was so cute.
Yeah. What came of it? Did he?
Me for like an hour and a half for, in this tiny
Yeah.
space, and it was fun. We mostly just talked about art and photography and things like that. So it was such a surreal setting for such a like a funny little segment. I really thought it was a sweet idea.
It's quite nice. I guess it's almost like yeah, conversation in an elevator. Just
Yeah, I'll
have
send it to
a
you. I
moment.
think you'd enjoy it.
Yeah.
He's an actor friend of mine. But yeah, so what do you want to know about photography? What do you want to talk about?
Hmm. I'll try not to be too general, but I guess you start out general and then you maybe get more specific. But when did you start doing photography?
I was about 15, and I was in high school, and a friend of mine was in a higher grade, and they needed to have pictures done for yearbook. And he came up to me on the hallway and just asked if I wanted to do it, and I was like, okay. And he handed me a camera, and that was it. I haven't stopped since. So
So
it's been a long time.
were you drawn to it, or was it thrust upon you and then you kind of took it up as something, some kind of identity, or
It was something I was interested in, but like I was more into drawing. That was more my background, and I think with photography it was a way for me to be social without actually having to be social. Like I could use
Hmm.
it as sort of a segue into um situations, be like, here I am. I can save your memories or something. And I wanted to also like I was always interested in telling stories, and I think I like the immediacy of taking a picture. You can um, I can see a composition immediately, and I think I really was drawn to that because I can be lazy. And the nice thing about photography is that it's instantaneous. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how it started. I started documenting um, things in high school, just because I knew like these were memories that were going to be gone quickly. And so I ended up like photographing all my friends, things in class. They actually let me take pictures in class, which I think is generous. And and I would skip school a lot and like go,
Right, okay.
go out and photograph all my buddies. And I think I took to it then. I was interested in I think from a historical sense. I think I was coming from that angle, not so much artistic. That came later. But yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Yeah. So trying to think how to phrase it. So it gave you something though. Did it color your life in some way?
Yeah, it gave me some sort of I don't want to say purpose because I think that's too narrowing, but it gave me something. It gave me a passion. That's what it did, and that's as corny as it sounds. Um, it was something fun to do and a way to connect with people that I don't naturally have. I mean, I'm outgoing, but I'm very shy, and I think that a camera is sort of like an icebreaker,
Hmm.
and so that's kind of how I got interested in doing that. And then for a while I gave it up because at that point it was just film, and I didn't have the money to constantly get film and developing and all that stuff. So I ended up going back into drawing and painting. And I did that for quite a while, and then really got frustrated in art school,
Mm.
and I went another direction. I started doing like video work,
Yeah.
and I started realizing that I could integrate all of these things instead of having like a singular path. I could start spidering out a bit. And so, and I realized that all these art forms started informing each other.
Mm.
So that's,
You go to art school?
I did go to art school. I went to Penn State
Yeah.
University, and they had a pretty good art program there called Integrative Arts, and it let you tailor your own major.
Right.
So that was lovely. I could do whatever I wanted. So
Yeah. Well, what did you want to do?
I wanted to make music videos. I
Yeah.
always I always was interested in that art form. It's very much like a silent movie, which I've always been really interested in silent movies. And um that's what I wanted to do. So I finally had the means to do it and the tools to do it. And yeah, I was able to branch out into a whole bunch of different stuff at once. I think I was very grateful to have the time at university when I did, because it was Wild West frontier vibes all over. Like, we were all just kind of like, what can we do now? What can we make with this? And what do we have available to us now that didn't exist 10 years ago?
So what did you make? What sticks out to you from that time?
Oh, one of the things I figured out, I really wanted to do animation, but we didn't have access to the Oxberry camera in the film department. They wouldn't let us use it because we were like the misfit people. So I realized one night I was messing around with Photoshop, and I kept doing little edits. I thought I could turn Photoshop into an Oxberry and make collages. This is before like Flash. I didn't know how to figure out Flash or any of that stuff. That was what like starting to come out. I thought, what if I made collages in Photoshop and made like a whole bunch of them and strung them together like animation cells? So I started making these really messed up, collages in Photoshop, and then just moving them slightly. And then I made a sort of stop motion, and I'm proud of myself for figuring that out.
Mm.
Like, I mean, it was very like Terry Gilliam kind of disjointed weird stuff. Like had like spiders coming out of people's heads, and
Yeah.
um, what else? I did one where it was like a mermaid under the ocean, and like a school of Swedish fish swam by. So, so like I would mess around with those kinds of things, and I would like hop myself up on caffeine and do all-nighters.
Yeah.
And that's that's how I've worked the rest of my adult life, is just like in bursts of madness. I don't know.
Do you think that's the preferable way to work?
I don't know if it's sustainable.
No.
We'll find out. I'm disciplined in the sense that I'm always working, but my means of doing so is batshit.
What do you think chaos helps an artist at all?
Um, you need a balance. You can't work in chaos all the time at all, and you can't work in depression. I think the idea of the depressed artist is awful. It's like you can't function. Um, but you need a balance of feeling a sense of safety
Mm.
versus a sense of no safety net. I mean, there's a freedom there that I think we need to have. Like, it's not good to be safe all the time. Maybe the element of like the unknown is good.
How do you how do you prevent safety in art and photography?
Keep yourself open to new ideas and new possibilities, and be open to different methods. You don't stagnate yourself. Don't typecast yourself.
Mm.
Is definitely the number one. And also don't listen to rules like all the time.
Yeah.
If somebody gives you a critique, like, I mean, art school wasn't the best situation for me, but if somebody gives you a critique and you think that the advice that they give you is worth listening to, be open to that, but don't limit yourself by their judgment.
What was your most dangerous artwork, in your opinion?
Oh God. I did well, I got into performance art,
Hmm.
and I pieced about my family, which was really it was like an exorcism. I needed to do that, and it pushed me over the edge. I mean, I like had a break, and my family and I got in a fight, and we didn't talk for a long time, and um that was very dangerous because it was going um very inward.
Hmm.
It wasn't me projecting something out. It was like I was facing stuff that I'd held a long time, and I think that was very dangerous, but it also needed to happen. It was a catharsis that had to happen.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot of questions that I want to ask, I suppose, but okay. I mean, are you comfortable going into what it was that you felt you exercised?
What's that?
What are you comfortable in going into what it was that you felt you exercised? What are the problems that you figured out for yourself, really?
Yeah. Yeah, I am. We can talk about that.
Okay, so what did you figure out then?
I figured out that I was harnessing a lot of stuff that didn't belong to me, and a lot of things had been sort of put on my shoulders
Can you be
that
specific?
um just family history, and
Like
just
inherited trauma?
inherited trauma. Yeah, that was a lot of it, and it's stuff that my family didn't really want to deal with. And I think I started seeing patterns emerging throughout the generations, and I wanted to break those cycles, and I felt that I had to examine actually what the cycles were and the roots of them before I could feel like it wasn't something I needed in my life anymore.
What patterns? When you talk about patterns, are you talking about a depressive mindset? Are you
Yeah,
talking about
mindset or fear of change,
hmm.
fear of and just mental breaks that had happened. We dealt with a lot of those kinds of things, and a lot of pain, and a lot of just I think it's more universal than people want to admit.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of embarrassment and shame in a lot of these things that had happened, abuse, and PTSD from that. Whoever got that generation, it's like how did they impart that on the next one?
Hmm.
And um, I used to think that we were unusually crazy. We're not. But so I did a piece where I used a lot of masks, and I made sort of a Greek tragedy sort of setup, and examined each person individually and channeled them through, I think. And that was intense. Um, it was like trying to get into their mindset to understand why they would do things the way they did. And I think that danger of it's almost like method acting with your own DNA. And yeah, it was psychologically insane. But I think once I was able to confront each of those people that were almost like mythological creatures in a way, you could see them as human and fragile. And I wanted to give them a sort of rest, like a spiritual rest. I think that's what I was going for.
If there
I've never done anything dangerous in the sense. Well, I mean, I've like cut my fingertip off with an X-Acto knife. If that's another form of danger.
yeah, that's maybe a bit too literal.
Yeah, I don't want to go literal. Yeah, that was. We'll stick to the metaphors. I'm not very good with knives. That's.
Well, okay, I guess that leads on to another question, which how do you get a sense of a person?
I observe them for a little bit. Like if I'm doing a photo shoot with like as a portrait,
Hmm.
I usually will. spend about an hour or so with them and just chit chat,
Mm.
get to know them a little bit, um, ask them what they're looking for, not necessarily specific to that photograph like that we're going to work with, but just what they're looking for in general in life, and um, the mood they're going for. I'm very very in tune to moods,
Mm.
and then like we'll have a chat, and then I'll just start talking to them while I'm taking the photograph. And so a lot of my portraits are very reactive, and it feels like you're having a conversation, but it can also be heightened, like they're, wearing a bizarre costume or in a strange setting. So that's how I like to get to know who I'm shooting. And almost everybody I've done photo shoots with, I've ended up becoming friends with, just
Yeah.
in a way, because it's funny. Like, I don't know if you know much about the Amish.
Yeah.
Like, they're a little strange, but they have a philosophy that if somebody takes your photograph, they're stealing a part of your soul. And I've always thought that I don't, people take it literally, but I think it's more in the sense of you're being singled out from a collective, and they
Yeah.
don't like that. Um, so I think of that a lot, and just like how can I find the soul of a person when I'm taking their picture, and how can I connect to that part of them that maybe they want to hide, or maybe they're shy about showing, or sometimes it just happens and it emerges. So
So what's your go-to question when you're trying to figure someone out?
I don't ask questions so much. I just let them start talking and I listen.
Mm.
I find I'm not somebody that enjoys invasive questions or nagging or things. I don't like to be penetrated quickly. So I think that's how my approach is with people, is just like, let's hang out, let's get a cup of coffee and just see what happens.
Yeah.
I think it's a more organic way of working too.
Do you think you have to know someone to take a good photograph of them?
Not in the sense where you're grilling them.
Mm.
Uh, I think just observing their body language, or um, maybe talking with them a little bit about something completely unrelated to what we're doing.
Mm.
That's usually how it happens. Um,
How does that inform the photo? How do you use that information to get a better photo?
um,
Or is it more instinctive?
I think it's instinctive. I don't really have that process. I don't think about it consciously. I mean, I'm sure I do it, but it's on a subconscious level.
Well, okay, so when you first took photographs in high school, what were you looking at? What were you said,
Preserve, yeah, preserving history
yeah,
specifically, because I knew high school was a very liminal time.
yeah.
And I would never see these people again after I left, and that was mostly true. And I knew, because a lot of them would be staying, that it would be important to have those documented, because it would be a much more um, important time in their lives.
Mm.
And so I think I was driven in saying, like, how can I, because I was the yearbook editor, like I did the photos for the yearbook. So at that point in my life, I thought, what if I'm like 50 years old and I want to look back on my high school memories, what would be special to remember? Um, I was thinking more historically, and I think the artistic side of it started emerging more in my mid-20s.
So
That
what was special from those times? Do you remember any specific photographs?
in high school,
Yeah.
um, yeah, ones that I shot in class. Uh, 'Cause I don't remember anything, honestly. That was just like, I like blanked that whole
Yeah.
life out, and it's almost like the only thing that exists of that time now are these pictures I took. Um, that was more like learning the mechanics of a camera, and um, maybe just figuring out like how to compose something. So, I'd see somebody talking and I would just single that out, or I'd be at a pep rally and see people in a crowd and think, oh, I love that, like moment of joy, or whatever is coming out of them. Um, and then I think I started getting more into, because I knew everybody. Like we had a very small school, so like I knew most of those people from childhood. So that element wasn't there yet of getting to know somebody. I think it was more when I started doing stuff in my mid-20s and started doing stuff more for hire. But portraiture didn't really come about until later. And
Mm.
then I started getting more interested in lighting and how lighting affects mood or brings out mood, that kind of thing. It's a very complex series of events that it just happens automatically. So
Yeah.
it's interesting for you to ask these questions, because I don't actually think about it.
Did you ever think about it? Was it ever conscious, or was it always just no?
No, it's never conscious. It's one of those things where I look a lot at other people's work and I admire how, say like Diane Arbus photographed something, off kilter, or how dreamy Sally Mann's work is. I like I'll take those elements that I really appreciate about somebody's work and see if I can find that in the situation I'm in. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with photography that there are obviously elements of technique, but ultimately, because you're dealing with moments, it's either there or it isn't.
Yeah, it's hard to. I'm not good at constructing a moment. I find it really artificial. Um, I can construct a set or an environment that they can be themselves in, but it's very hard for me to do a portrait session of somebody where they're highly posed, because
Yeah,
this nervousness comes out and I hate it. It's fakery. I don't care for. Um, it's just unnatural. I'd rather see somebody in their element in a strange place, like out of like a fish out of water situation. I find that more interesting. Um, I look through a lot of I look at photos all the time,
mm,
and a lot of times people will do these really beautiful posed pictures, and it feels soulless. Like um, there's no element of humanity in it that I can connect with.
like a
But
fashion magazine or
yeah,
something.
yeah, exactly. I don't like working with fashion models. I've tried that route and it's just no.
What's difficult about that, or what is unappealing about that?
I feel like the models are very self-conscious because that's their job, is to be self-conscious. And it's very rare that I take a photo with a model that is human. Like they're so highly trained to emote something uh in a theater sense, maybe, or have no emotion whatsoever. It's just like we're a mannequin, and I it's not a communication to me. It's basically like a showcase of how the clothes should look, and I don't. I'm the one that looks at the faces rather than the clothes. So I think the best fashion photographers are the people that are able to integrate that, like Irving Penn, or uh, I can't think of any offhand, but Irving Penn I really love.
Hmm.
Um, Herb Ritz, he was another one that was able to do it. But um, I've worked on fashion shoots and found them really boring. It's just
One,
I like runway is just like
you said something interesting just there offhand about photography being communication.
yeah.
Do you care to elaborate on that?
Um, well, it's not like an illustration where you can take some liberties and create like a fantasy world around something. It's like you're actually taking an image of something that actually exists, and you're manipulating the light surrounding that person and the shadow and everything. So um I think primarily what I want to do is tell a story and like look at the person's face and see what might be coming through them. Maybe I might want to catch them in a moment that's a little off kilter, like that's not posed, like they're thinking about something and their eyes are closed, or they're just like in an off moment. I like the off moments, and I find that a lot of the interesting stuff comes out of that.
But it's gonna sound a bit glib,
And
but it's gonna sound a bit glib, but I just wanted to ask why. Why are you drawn to off moments as opposed to something very controlled?
there's like a playfulness to it, but also I think there's reality in those moments. You know, that's the moment where they're not on. You know, it's not like, it's like that's the second where the mask is off. And I'm very drawn to the idea of unleashing something that's unexpected.
Do you think everyone's hiding something?
Not everybody, but I think there are elements that people like to keep secret, or I think one of the things that I have a trouble with is affectation,
Hmm.
and I want to capture something of somebody that is not organized, you know, like, or curated. I hate curation. I think maybe that's what it is. It's like this, the idea of like Instagram people curating their lives, and it's like lying through a mission. And I want to find a moment where that person's human, and, you know, like maybe having a thought that you didn't expect out of them. Like I love that kind of discovery.
Is that getting harder to do nowadays?
Not with the people I run with, no. I find the people I'm around are very genuine and open to experimenting like that. There's a few people that I have worked with that are very much like, you have to shoot me this way from this angle. And it's just like, no, I don't want to do that. I'd rather like get you with your hand over your head, or something real. And I'm not very good at construction of artificiality. It's I don't know, I just want to like punch it down.
Yeah. I mean,
It's funny in the music industry, because I've worked a lot with producers
yeah,
who are there's Bengalis, and they want to have an image.
yes.
And I think maybe that's like my rebellious nature is like, fuck that. I don't care what you're thinking. I want to be able to direct my own situation here. And I've had a couple of instances where I've worked with artists who have these producers that say like, this was the image I had of you in my mind as I made this music. I'm like, I don't know. Like, so
Image is everything.
I hate it.
Yeah. What is it? Is it tougher now to be a photographer because there's so much photography? It might not be high art, but everyone takes photos of everything. So is there something that you have to do differently?
Yeah, I think my advice to that person who feels overwhelmed by that is, they're not taking the photos you're taking.
Hmm.
You're gonna have a completely different viewpoint, and means of doing it. There's a lot of competition. Like I've shot a lot of concerts. I'm sure you've seen some of
Hmm.
those. And when I'm there, there's usually like 5 or 6 men there. It's usually men, and they all have like an arsenal of lenses, and they're very much like, you know, I'm gonna document this moment. And I feel like I've seen a lot of identical approaches to shooting concerts, and what I've decided to do that to make myself not necessarily stand out, but like have a different approach, is like, how would I feel if I were on stage and somebody were doing a portrait of me in action?
Hmm.
So I shot a lot of people. Like I use a 50 millimeter lens, so it's very tight and it really focuses on the face. And I want to see like what comes out of a person while they're performing, and what are they emoting, what are they channeling through their bodies, um what are they looking like, and is it flattering, is it an interesting portrait? And it's not documentary at all. It's like I am documenting a moment, but um, I'm also taking it from an approach of like um, I don't know, like a painting almost. Just like what is this composition that's appearing in my monitor, and how can I turn that into something really interesting? And a lot of times, like I don't even know until I get home, and then I look through them, and I'll start like sorting out um, those things. And I'm starting actually. You know Joseph Tovey.
Yeah.
He gave me some really amazing advice. He said, "Don't shoot a lot of photographs. Like, don't shoot like 400 pictures at once." He goes, "Really start selecting your moments and curating that. That's where curation can be useful. It's instead of like overwhelming yourself with too many images to sort through. Start really noticing, like being more mindful of what you're taking instead of just reacting." That was good advice.
Hmm. So, what have you shot that you're particularly proud of?
Documentary. I know I'm all over the place, right? But I did a lot of street photography in New York when I
Hmm.
first got here, and I was really fascinated by all facets of life here, from homeless to like the 1%, and how delicate that balance was. Now we're finding it was all terrible. But I did a lot of work. I was working as a nanny for a bunch of musicians. So like if they'd be on tour or whatever, I'd like, watch their kid for a while and then like go home at 2 in the morning. Like if they would be like playing Broadway or concerts or whatever. So I would come home really late, and I would notice, people on the street or in the subway. And I started just kind of documenting all of that. It's funny because I go back and forth between documentation and artistry, and like both of them inform each other, but they're not. I don't I
The
don't use
same.
this.
The
Yeah.
same to you.
It's all about like how do I put it? I feel like documentary is more like a mission, like um having moments of history that are going away, whereas photography that's more conceptual is a reflection of that. So if that makes sense. It's
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it makes sense. I mean, is there also an emotional element to it, or is it?
Yeah. But for both of them, I'm finding the emotion in it. Like, it's very difficult for me to go through the street stuff because it's so raw and it's so real and it's so hard to look at. I've come across a lot of situations that um, are upsetting, uh, and I'll confront them. I've seen a lot of awful stuff, and I think maybe the conceptual thing is more of a reflection of it with another person. Like how can I find something in them that's not quite so dangerous?
Yeah,
I don't. Oh yeah, going back to
seems to
danger.
be quite drawn to danger.
I am. I don't know. I'm a risk taker. I not drawn to danger. I think I just happen to. Jack said something the other day that was great. He said I had a soldier's mentality. I'm able to like divorce myself sometimes from a situation to just like observe it, and then I'll process it later. Just disassociation, but also in a way that like I'm able to process something that I see. I don't know. I think photography in that sense is more like how my mind works. It's like I'll see a situation, I'll get out of my mind for a little bit and observe it and then go home and process it.
Does that help in photography? Being
Yeah,
able to do that? Yeah.
I think it's naturally good for people who have like complex PTSD. It's like this is how your brain works anyway.
Hmm.
So you might as well like channel that energy into something like, visceral.
What have you seen that
Okay.
particularly shocked you?
A man dying on
Really?
this. He had a heart attack, and that was bad. I've come across a couple overdoses and stayed with them while the ambulance came. A man had a heart attack on a platform in the subway. And a lot of times I'll sit with them and just, you know, yeah. New York is rough. There's a lot of homeless. I've seen dreadful stuff. And a lot of times people will just look away or pretend it wasn't happening, or um, be afraid of it. And I was more just like, how are these people existing? Like how do you live on the street with like a stub for a foot and no safety net? And I connected to that. It was like, these people are rotting on the streets and nobody's paying attention to it. Now we're in the middle of this pandemic and they've all been whisked away, or
Yeah.
they're put in hotels all of a sudden because they're a risk to people. And for the past 5 years, I've just been wondering, like, what's going to happen. I'm all over the place with this interview. I'm sorry. I'm just like,
No problem.
that's how my life is. It's literally all over the place. And I wanted to find a way to tell these people's stories that wasn't exploitative. Like I really detest that. I was homeless myself for a little while. I didn't like live on the streets, but I, had a situation where I was like living on people's sofas. And um, maybe that horror of thinking like this could be my next step, that was a lot of it. It was like maybe almost observing, like, how are they doing this, how are they existing, and knowing that I'm like a step away from it, that was a mind fuck.
In
And
those situations, when do you take the photograph?
I there's an instinct with that. It's like, this is an important thing to remember. This is a thing that you're going to have to come back to at some point. This illustrates something. Um, I haven't done anything with these photographs only because it's so raw and it's so hard to look at them. And I'm terrified of doing the wrong thing with them. I don't want to exploit people. I don't want to um, start a pity party.
Mm.
I don't want to make money off these photographs because I think that would be really evil. But um, historically speaking, they're important. And so I've just been kind of sitting on them for a while. Now that this has happened with the pandemic, I don't know what's going to happen next. If that's going to be, there's a lot of danger of people just losing their homes and everything collapsing. So it's almost been like me kind of assessing possibilities of where society's headed and how people have reacted in the past. And I don't know, it's a complex thing to think about. And I don't know, I don't want to be heartless about it.
Where are the photographs?
I have them on my hard drive and I have them on my Flickr. I do have them on my Flickr, but I haven't sent them out anywhere. Or I mean, I think one publication did it because it was a piece on homelessness and the political situation. I've been very selective of, where I would license pictures or allow them to go. Um, I'm like that anyway, but I don't know. I don't know what to do with them, honestly. And maybe they need to just sit somewhere until they're needed.
Mm. And what would that need be? When do you think that time would come?
I don't know. That's the strange thing about them. It's like uh I don't know what the right thing to do with them is. They
Yeah.
just, for now, and I'm sure a path will be revealed at some point. But I don't, they might just not be ready. They might be ready 30 years from now or 20 years from now, but not now, I don't think. I don't know what I could do with them.
Do you think about them a lot?
Day, every day of my life. And I
Really?
wonder who the people are. I wonder what happened to them. I wonder how they ended up in that situation. Like, some are addicts, sure. Some of them had, mental problems and were failed by the society. And then there were people that just fell through cracks. And I've talked to a lot of them. I've been trying to maybe understand it from a point of view that most people would ignore, but yeah, I don't know what to do with them.
Do you feel powerless as an artist?
Yeah and no. I feel that I have a sense of power in that I have a voice and I can channel information, but reacting to what I am doing my work about, it's maybe a sense of organization, not power.
Do you feel powerless as a person?
I can, yeah. I mean, right now the situation in New York is insane. It's absolutely like nobody can make any sense of it. We're all kind of trapped in these rooms, and we're not leaving. And I think we're all being forced right now to really come to terms with everything at once, and it's very heavy here. And then there's other parts of the country where people are in complete denial, and you see these stories where people are just like, you need to go back to work so I can get a haircut, things like this. I'm just like this disconnect of humanity, and I feel like that's a powerlessness that I can only react to what I can do in my immediate surroundings, but I can't wrap my head around just like the injustices and the arrogance Americans have.
How do you cope?
Huh?
How do you cope?
I,
With
I I throw myself into work. I
Hmm.
always have. It's sometimes I flatline and just don't. I look at the ceiling all day, but mostly I work, and it's sometimes it's just like throwing things against a wall
Hmm.
and not having having any kind of purpose. It's just like something to do mindless to keep your mind off of something. And sometimes you really need to wallow in it and feel. And that's not something I'm good at. I'm learning.
What do you learn?
What have I learned? I've learned that I need to just calm down and not substitute work as like meaningful interactions with people. I will bury myself in it and not talk to people for a long time. Uh, Not the best strategy. I don't really drink or do drugs, mostly because I don't like having my mind clouded. I do like psychedelics, but that's another story. Um, I don't have coping mechanisms that most people cling to because they haven't worked for me in the past. I'd rather not necessarily be productive, but have like an outlet.
Hmm.
That's pretty much how I cope with that stuff. Otherwise, it gets very depressing and it gets uh, overwhelming, and I don't think that's good either. So I try to find ways to let it out of me, and instead of harboring it for a long time, and find ways to be useful. Maybe I think useful might be
Hmm.
the word.
Where do you want to go with your work?
What's that?
Where do you want to go with your work?
I think I'm in a place where I'm actually quite happy with my work. I'm able to do lots of different things, and I have lots of different things I can draw from, which I think is ideal. I don't like to get in a rut. So if I'm bored, I can do a painting. I've been doing like different things. I whatever I'm
What
inspired by.
have you done this side of quarantine?
Yeah. What? You like, see the
Can I see any work?
yeah, actually you can. I actually did a thing with Joseph. Um we've been doing like little exercises where like we'll like play around with stuff. So I did this kind of psychedelic painting of him.
Nice.
And he sent me photos that he shot of himself, and I did a drawing of it, and then kind of added oddball elements to it. Um, What else have I done? I have some other stuff here. Hold on a minute. I'm gonna go away.
That's fine. Leave me looking at the ceiling.
Ceiling gazing.
This is the equivalent of looking at the sky nowadays.
Yeah, you get to see my lights and this wonderful. There's my wall hanging there. I did one of Jack too. We did. He said, "Can you draw me in with the Liberty Bell?" And I thought it was a very interesting metaphor. I was like, okay, here's a cracked bell, and Jack is an interesting person, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of like do an echo element of the one I just did of Joseph. So we'll see where these.
So they all painted.
They're mixed media. I used paint and graphite. Like this is graphite where the drawing is.
Did you draw him first and then cut it out and stick it on the canvas, or did you draw him on the canvas?
I drew it on tracing paper and rubbed it onto the canvas. Like I did like a rubbing, and then drew on top of it and painted on top of it, and then did stuff with Sharpie, acrylic paints. It's kind of a mix of stuff. Whatever I have in the house right now, like art supply wise, I'm dwindling. So that's why they're half finished. And then the one of Jack is the same process. I drew him on tracing paper and rubbed him onto the canvas.
Why do you think you do that? Why do you think? Why did you? Where have these instincts come to make these things?
Wow, I don't know. I never thought of it. I think. Well, these were just fun things to do. Like we were all kind of bored, and Joseph was like, "Draw me," and I thought, yeah, this would be fun. We've done that before. With Jack was like, we were always bouncing off ideas. So I was like, what if I did like a whole series of just people I talked to in quarantine, and like have a whole collection? It would be funny to put on the wall of like, these are the people that I had contact with while I was trapped in this room. My prison buddies.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll do one of you if you like. We can.
Yeah, sure. I would be happy for you to do that, to be honest.
Fun. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I found all these canvases on the street, and they've been kind of sitting around. They came from a daycare around the corner, and I thought, well, that's a shame. I don't want to like use it. So I gessoed on top of them and thought I'd use the canvas. That's what Basquiat did. He stole stuff off the street.
Good indeed.
Yeah. So what else would you like to talk about?
Nothing really. I think that's a pretty good conversation for now.
Oh yeah, I'll talk your ear off.
No, I'm happy. I was happy with that. I thought it was a lot of interesting things, and I got to know a bit more about you. I think, yeah, I found it interesting. Especially the first meeting between people.
Yeah, I know. I've met you like briefly. I think I like popped in on a call or something.
Yeah,
was the talking of music.
Yeah, Instagram Live jaunts.
I love it. It's wonderful. It's like, I don't know. It's a form of connection I like. It's just kind of like, let's chit chat and see if people show up.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's, it'd be like at the pub or something. You just, this is how things go. You have these bizarre conversations, and sometimes people winnow in and out.
Yeah, they dip in and out. Yeah.
It was so nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it was nice.
I hope this helps you and you find a new path here.
I've got an idea, but it's probably a post-quarantine idea, so need to bide my time.
That will be.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to leave you in suspense for now.
Good. That's fun. I like a nice element of danger, as you know.
Oh no, I do know that now.
We got my fish here.
Oh God, it's a big fish.
It is, isn't it? I don't. He's just here. He's been my friend for years.
You're not going too crazy. You're not talking to the fish, are you?
No, he's not responding either. So I know so far it's all right. Oh,
Okay, let me just stop recording. So,
Hello, Robert.
Hello, I'm live on the
Live.
internet here. Well, pre-recorded, but don't say that.
Pre-recorded. We're the live studio audience. We're pre-recording for each other.
And here they are. We've got a nice wallpaper behind me. I can't see what that is, but the Elvis calendar has gone out of view.
You're not meant to tell them. It's obscure. Now, dear viewers, those who do not know, or if I haven't given an adequate introduction already, this is Robbie Wood, also known as Cardinal Fang, and is a guitar player, and he plays synths in Swim Deep.
Yeah,
Guitar player.
I've got a little bit of synth on the side. I do enjoy playing synthesizer with maybe two hands or two fingers.
Two-handed
I've
job.
just got a new. I'll show you that. I got a Poly 800. It's quite blurred for some reason because of the background, but with the reverse keys.
Reverse keys.
So I'll be using this live with Swim Deep. It's more like mid-80s pads, that kind of sounds. Very cheap synthesizer for what it is.
Yeah.
Big hunk of plastic. And that's what I like. And
obviously the reason we're doing this via Skype, I mean, we don't need to tell you, but for historical reasons, it is because there's been a global pandemic of an influenza-type virus that has been giving people pneumonia and
that's great. Yeah.
So we're sequestered in our very humble abode, or our parents' houses, is more realistic. But we're still tremendous friends in spite of that. Okay. So first question, Robbie, I've been dying to ask you this. Now that you're in a touring band, Swim Deep, obviously beloved stalwart to the Birmingham scene and very well known. What's your relationship now to your solo stuff now that you're writing and touring with Swim Deep? How do you relate to Cardinal Fang? Where's that part of your life?
I started to write with the band, which is nice. And there's nothing better with like bouncing off ideas of other people. As much as it's good, working by yourself. Like joining the band happened very quickly, and within a few months we went to studio and made the album. By then it was mainly written, but there was some experimentation, in the studio. And I'm very short-tempered and get frustrated easily, so that kind of works. I did storm out once, but because I couldn't get a tape right. But yeah, I'll always be working by myself. But that's more of like a personal journey, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And that like now I'm not really writing, because for me it takes like a huge accumulative effort of like building up ideas, things you read, all this kind of stuff, and then like having a single idea. Although I did something in January, that's the last thing I did. But yeah, as a band, we all have common interests, and trying to make like a really interesting pop song, I think it's the biggest challenge for me in the band. And it's something very interesting I hadn't really thought about until I joined.
The alchemy of the pop hit, well, not even a hit, it's a great pop tune. It's a fine art, isn't it, in itself?
Yeah, yeah, it's very divided. You know, people hate it or they love it. But yeah, I mean, making pop songs collaboratively is very interesting as well. I guess that's more what happens these days. You get like several writers, but Ozzy, the singer, is the main writer in the band. But me and Tom, who joined, have been writing with him, which has been very interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always going to be separate. I'm always going to do my own stuff. But yeah, right now I don't know what to do. My solo stuff, to be honest. I wanted to get a band together in London, just about got one, but that's off for another year. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, you mentioned before to me that, yeah, you started out, Cardinal Fang was, you used to have a bit more artistic to it and kind of a persona of kind of maybe almost science fiction,
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of out somewhere else, and that might have been, yeah, now that you've been writing for so long, kind of eased into yourself a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, there's only so much you can sort of go with not your, being someone else, I guess, or trying to write in the third person or not writing about your own life. So the interesting experiment doing that in the first place. That was an effort to sort of, reach out and try something different and see if something stuck.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of singer-songwriters and solo artists where it's very personal from the get-go, and that can be quite tiresome as well. And then you don't, I know that when you kind of write songs for something, you really don't know which direction you're going to go. But yeah, the thing is, being in a band that's obviously touring and going to all these different places, you basically went around the world. How was being on tour and seeing these different places, and what was the most interesting areas you went to?
Yeah, the first place we did was the UK tour, which is actually the first proper tour I've actually been on, which is weird because I've played loads of shows before and done like residencies and all that. It's like the first proper UK tour, so I was very excited. We went to lots of places I haven't been, and also I think it's interesting. Like people say the UK is so divided. The press really, don't they? I mean, you actually go around the UK and meet people, and you realise, it's not really like that. I mean, obviously, it's young people who go to shows. It's kind of a different audience, but you realise, there's not much difference. And yeah, the last show was in London. I know it was sold out, and that was great because at that point we were kind of just playing very well, like automatically. And I did my first crowd stuff. That was very fun. And that's the last show, and I felt very, I guess, cool post-tour blues. But I guess that's the strange feeling of emptiness that comes after like a long journey. Yeah. And then we went to Thailand, and then we went to China. China was very interesting because we couldn't promote it because they don't have any social media. So it was very old school in that way, where we're just like relying on the booker, and you never know if your booker there's like bullshit if you get there. The whole tour was done by Modern Sky, so it's like a whole like package tour, I guess. So they have to promote it, and they put on the festivals that you're on and also the headline shows. So that was weird. Also, like the Beijing show, there's no support band, and like 10 minutes before we go on, there's like 3 people there, and I'm like, where is everyone? Like, fuck's sake! And they're like, oh no, everyone comes like exactly on time, like when you go on. I'm like, all right. we go on and like, oh, okay, there's some people here, I guess. Like, that's strange. Like, no support band. But yeah, the shows were good. It was very like, we didn't have a tour manager or anyone with us, so we had to do everything ourselves, which was fucking stressful. But it worked in the end. It was very good. We tried to cut costs in that way. We had a Chinese booker translate for us and sort stuff out. But yeah, it was great. I mean, going across the world not knowing what to do just by yourself, just in this group, was no greater feeling. I love that. I love traveling. Thailand, China, I've never been before. Going to two places I've never been, plus playing there. Not only visiting, but actually working.
And were the crowds, when they did actually show up, because obviously they were on, to the minute correct of when they showed up, were the people there? Did people know about Swim Deep?
Yeah. Thailand was bonkers. I mean, I think people in China are a bit more shy. But actually, in a few places, they were really like, come and talk to you, which is really nice. I don't know, really. I like to say I can't remember. No, it was good, yeah. Like, cool young Chinese people, which you don't really hear about. Like almost like Harajuku dressed, like guy. There's this guy in this like all pink fluffy outfit with like shades on, who's just like came up to us and we're like, oh. He's like, I'm your biggest fan. I was like, in Thailand people are really friendly. So we played this festival. It's like the horrors playing the day before. And we got a bit mobbed there, which is quite interesting. We couldn't really get into the festival without people running up to you. But then again, it's like, in Thailand and China, it's like people, Western bands, they don't play much. So when a band does come, it must be great. Because you're like, oh, you're a band from England, like that's amazing, And you're just like, well, there's thousands of us. Yeah. But now it's an exotic thing, like, wow, English bands. It's like a factory. It's like all these English bands coming over here. They're like placed on a pedestal because we're English. Which is a weird thing.
It doesn't happen in England. It just doesn't happen in England when you're English. It's not as
it's kind of hard to put to that. What's the equivalent? Maybe American bands back in the day.
Japanese bands, kind of cool.
Yeah.
Really, have to be really far away. Then I mean, it is crazy. You've travelled thousands of miles. It is crazy. I mean, it must feel like quite a special thing. Yeah. But staying in the East, now that you've spoken about that area, you stayed or lived in Tokyo? You lived in Tokyo for a bit? Is that right?
For about 6 months I visited there. Like, were you saying to change your relationship? It's hard to say.
Yeah, like how did
without sounding like new age, without sounding new age. Before.
It was so inspiring. Well, no, I mean, but
not like Western way as well, but just then we discussed before about like textures and space in music. Artists like Ryuichi Sakamoto, like layering textures and space in Japanese music is really important. Something I never really thought about before. I mean, I got into Japanese music just before I actually went the first time, which is kind of funny. I was just like, woo, like listening.
What year did you go?
What's that?
What year was it that you lived there?
2016.
Okay.
So 4 years ago. So I got very obsessed with Yellow Magic Orchestra and their affiliations, and I couldn't believe some of the music people were showing me. When I was there, a lot of it sound like it come out tomorrow. But you can be in that sort of European bubble, can't you? Of a lot of it's being the last 5 years, been like properly recognised,
Yeah.
reissued and all
Like
that.
2016 as well for me. Like 2016 was probably when I knew of Sakamoto and obviously through Japan for a few years, but it was only when I was in London 2016 kind of time when Yellow Magic Orchestra was like yeah man. They like knew what they were doing. They like knew. They had some secret information about what music is. It sounds like.
Yeah, the music is perfect. Like for me, it's
I mean, a lot of bands can put orchestra in their name all they like ELO or any other band with orchestra, but none of them feel like orchestras apart from Yellow Magic Orchestra.
Well, in 20 years, I'll probably be bored playing one note for 20 minutes. That's the way things are going for me. You know?
Yeah. I think going back now, swinging back to England or anywhere in the world now.
Okay.
Obviously, I mean, what kind of size venues are you playing with Sunday? Because I know that for me and you, maybe if we do solo-y things or things with people, generally it would have to be quite small to medium if we're ever going to, do it. Those are the venues it seems like are going to get absolutely destroyed by Corona. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were about the general health, regardless of Corona, the general landscape of venues that people like us would end up playing.
Mm-hmm. I say go on crowdfunders and see if your local venues are there, because a few of my favourite venues need 30 grand to stay afloat this month. There's only so much you can give. I can't see shows in general being on until at least Christmas, and probably not even then. Problem is, if they don't survive, they'll be turned into luxury flats or fuck knows what.
Yeah.
Or maybe something will happen where people are so desperate that when live music comes back, there'll be some sort of mental form of resurgence in smaller venues, especially like a strange sort of East Berlin horrible non-stop techno party,
But we don't, kind of, that's blue sky thinking. That's blue sky thinking, Robbie. I don't know if that's going to happen in Stourbridge.
No,
but
it's that effect of there might be sort of localized small scenes erupting in like a weird way that probably you couldn't think of now, but the only thing I can think of is like the Berlin Wall coming down.
I do feel like there will be the Corona wave will be a music form. There will be like a YouTube-based form of ambient music that is based around a kind of satire of chill. Another subgenre, a subdivision of the ambient. The ambient armada.
Yeah.
On the great seas of the web, the digital. Yeah.
That's my take on small venues / maybe online communities. For medium size, I mean, those are the ones that I played on the UK tour, and some of them are great, I mean, I don't know. I can't comment on the future. It's just getting worse.
I know there's a lot of. I know that, like, say, when we used to hang out in London sometimes, and the nights that I'd help put on in South, East, and East, I do wonder, when I visit London again, are they gonna be there? You know,
I feel like the ones that already adapted, the ones like also like bars and pubs might survive. Trying to think of an example. Even like the Shacklewell might survive, you know, because it's like a bar as well, separate. I think the ones that are like solely venues, I mean, it's going to be very hard for them, isn't it?
I think also, like, obviously, I'm not going to be the first one to say this, but in this country, despite, as you say, the great power that the mere fact that you're English musicians has around the world, they go, wow, you know, you're from England, that's cool. Somehow the English don't think that their music needs protecting or that the venues are part of the economy. There seems to be a general vibe of why you messing around with that.
It's so strange that there's like you know, there's a factory of English bands for the last 50 years, but then we treat them so badly. Even in,
it's like,
in French, isn't it? In France, you play a show and you know, they really protect you and feed you and look after you. You get to
there's a
these.
sense in England of like a sense of England of like you get what you're given and shut up. That seems to be the vibe.
That's the situation that got destroyed. Let's say, let's play in flat story. Let's go to the 80s. Because you know, with France, it's like the preservation. They have whole things about the AOP and the whole loads of laws about protection. We must protect French goods, French this and that. But the UK is just like, oh, you know.
And that was an attitude that kind of works when you're inside the EU, because it's like a lot of stuff is just looked after by the fact you're beholden to all the laws and all the rules and all the money flowing to the right places. But if you're not even going to engage with that and you're out the EU, and you've set this precedent of, oh, well, we don't have an industry anymore because we've got rid of all the miners and we got rid of everybody, but we're just going to accept the pain and it's just going to be bad forever and that's how we do it. It's so weird. You're like, it doesn't make sense. Like
a Chinese burn.
Like what?
A Chinese burn? Is that, sorry, that's what my dad calls it. It's probably wrong, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know. That's one of the words they use. In America, it's called an Indian burn. I don't know why they had to, why everything has to feel vaguely racist in hindsight. It does sound really racist, but we got it said out. We said it was just historical. Just historical, yeah, like just a sense of accepting pain. That seems to be the vibe in England of like, it's good for us. Yeah, like we're meant. Yeah, it's nothing. Pain never did me any harm. Shut up. Yeah. Anyway,
there are some institutions in the UK which are very good. I mean, Musicians Union, PRS, Arts Council, not really, because they're quite biased, but there are some. But yeah. What do I know?
There's basically saying there are institutions out there that
it's really out for them.
We've talked about England. We've talked about Asia. What about the big old US of A? Robert, you lived in America for a bit as well.
Yeah, for a year. I lived in America. Spent a lot of time abroad.
We gave is an international man of music, really, an international man of mystery and music and joy. America, I know, was a bit of an adventure for you and a bit of a misadventure and a fearful thing in some ways, and a funny thing as well. How did that change you, and what kind of things did you experience that you're able to talk about?
Well, as I was in my early 20s, around then, everything happens to you, and you start to realise things with your brain.
Yeah. The brain grows.
It takes a while though. I'm lucky to have spent a few years living abroad. At the time, I was quite stuck in England, and it's cliche of like I could not start anew, but I made a lot of friends and I made a lot of music, but it didn't end well. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't trust Americans. It took a long time for me to see through the bullshit that goes on in America. That said, I've had some friends for life there. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I've already been quite.
You had to. I mean, it sounds like it was quite a pain. Some of it was really painful.
Yeah, I got fucked over by a number of people over a period of time, and I got very ill and I nearly died as well. So.
Yeah, so you had to experience the most trustworthy bit of America, which is the health.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Like we said it earlier, it's still like very Wild Westy, every person for themselves. There are some good eggs. There's some good eggs in there.
I mean, I don't want anybody to think that we're saying about Americans. Americans, as we know, are incredibly lovely.
Yeah.
But you can get stung by some of them, I guess.
But my view of it now is looking back and also reconnecting with the UK after sort of traveling for a while, has reaffirmed my position on America, and reaffirmed my position of where I come from. Which is kind of nice as well, because I like it, and I've learned a lot on the journey, and I've made some friends. That's the main thing.
But I presume they quite enjoyed your English accent.
Yes, some sort of like Notting Hill accent. I mean, my accent's very nondescript South England accents. That's perfect for an American, And I mumble like Hugh Grant as well, so perfect.
Oh, I've never done that. I've never done that. So you have to tell me what that's like. You have to tell me what that's like. But what helped when you were just starting out in music as a wee lad, as a sort, what they call it, a saucepan lid, or whatever. Kid. When you were a kid, what was the thing that helped you most when you were trying to get an idea of making music? Like, what was your pathway, I guess, into composition and things like that?
My year 4 teacher called Mr. Weeks, he taught me guitar. I think I was in year 5 at the time, actually. I think I just end of year 4. So I joined the primary school band. I was one of those assholes. And we would play like Buddy Holly in assembly.
Yeah.
And he taught me like classic songs, but like he'd be like, "Yeah, come on, do it," like really passionate. And he taught me a lot to sort of like keep going, all that. And I actually saw him through disco first time in 10 years. He had no idea I was still playing music, so that was nice. But also, I should probably give a shout out to my dad, because he used to write for music publications in the 70s and DJ. So he used to, sing Beach Boys, Rolling Stones in my ear after a glass of wine or two when he was young. Well, when I was young, sorry, and he was young.
When you were both younger than you are today.
So he's, I mean, I actually got footage of me when I was young. I was about 4 years old and I had headphones on and like dribbling, going like this. So I guess I loved from get-go. One of those people, always wanted to do this. apart from a bit where I
Yeah.
wanted to be an astronaut very, very well.
Oh,
So always wanted to be a rock star.
oh.
And then I grew up and I realised that there was no industry left. I was
Well-
listening to music from the late 90s at the last.
Was there ever? But it's kind of it exists and it doesn't exist all the time, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Got a rant about that.
well, let's avoid let's avoid ranting for another day. I've been told off about my ranting about things.
Yeah. Okay.
This isn't the ranting club. Not the. Okay, so I was wondering that seeing as we're both kind of retro guys, I mean, look at our hair.
No, I was dressed as a mod earlier. Well, I've got these dog teeth. Got this little polo shirt in the post.
Polo shirt in the post.
Polo shirt in
So I was wondering that seeing as we've got an element of throwback intrigue to what we like, we don't think about that anymore so much. But I guess the outside eye, maybe some older people or younger people would be like, well, why the hell do you listen to that? Why the hell do you think that's relevant? Or
Yeah.
what's that about? So I was wondering, your relationship to it, I mean, it's presumably just as music, but I was wondering, do you see time as linear? When you're interested in stuff in the past and it's in your music, do you see it as a pastiche or a parody or a nostalgia? Or is it just something, it's almost like walking with God or something? You're in the same frame as the older musicians who they in turn in frame with stuff from their past, from their childhood, and before their time. How do you see it, and how do you justify it? How the hell do you sleep? That's what I'm going to
How do you see? Aha! Well, time is not linear. I got a D in my science GCSE, so that's no. Is it it's in space time, isn't it? There's three dimensions of space and one of time. Should look into that really. Well, it's interesting to think how small the timeline popular music and recorded music is, and that some people now are like, yeah, I'm done with that, But it has been rammed down the throats, the familiar. This is another one of the familiarity of it, and familiar reality. I can't even say it. I'm not.
The familiar reality of reality.
Reality. Jesus. To go off on another tangent, it's almost like people think of like recorded music. It makes me laugh. These music documentaries, where like there's these journalists. They're like, well, they're genius. Like, I can't explain it. There must be some sort of weird thing about it. And then they interview the musicians. And they're like in this huge living room. They're like, well, we had sex with lots of women and we smoked one off. Like, do you remember a time when you could fleece the public and make shit tons of money from music? Sorry, I just saw a few. I live with my parents now, so I've been watching music documentaries. It's just funny that like
it's mythology.
they were on the Shadows, and it's like this nostalgic thing of like, oh, you remember when there was a music industry and you could make money, and it's like fucking hell. People are so nostalgic about it already. If it's just like even a few years ago something came out, but I like to say it. You see it as cycles, but it's probably some other weird pattern of. I can annoy myself because I can be very pastiche. I heavily listen to early 80s music as well as other decades.
Other decades are available, but obviously we all know the years between 1979 and 1984 at most were basically it.
That's maybe down to some of like also the types of textures again and the sounds that I enjoy.
Yeah.
That crossover of analog and digital, maybe a bit of a hybrid there. Also the birth of. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Also the birth of home recording and indie labels led to a rise of weirdos releasing music all of a sudden, and all it wasn't just Rick Wakeman. The like, sorry, dude, what was your point? But hey, don't get me. I enjoy Scritti Politi's polished digital sound. Sorry.
I suppose I was just wondering. You completely scrambled my brain now. I don't know what I was asking. I think I was trying to get a sense of, how do you make it not feel like, oh, I'm dressing up and I'm playing the bleepy bloopy synthie music, like my granddad, listen to. Do you feel like you're dressing up sometimes? Do you worry about that? Do you care about that, or are you kind of think whatever?
I think a lot of people do, but styles are always becoming more and more hybrids.
Yeah.
You see a band or something, and you're like, hey, they've combined two things, and it's now a completely different, separate thing, and that can lead to something beautiful, And
a lot of
if there's like there is in Swim Deep, it can, because we all come from different angles. Something might stick, where it becomes hybrid.
I think like people forget that every decade is usually pretty directly referencing another decade, and what we consider iconic 80s or 70s. I mean, in the 70s there was a huge, there was lots of revivals, but you start to see 30-year cycles of nostalgia. I saw a YouTube essay about this thing. Of usually people look back to especially 30 years before, and in the 80s there was definitely a lot of references to 1920s and 30s and 50s, and I guess usually
like loads of like 50s covers but done electronically. Something like that.
Yeah, and also the music that we're one of the most like rewarding kinds of dance music I was ever interested in, and that we've listened to lots, is of course this kind of intersection of proto techno that was usually people directly lifting disco tracks and trying to turn them into synthesized versions or very gritty kind of goth, almost by accident goth, and almost by accident techno. That wasn't quite techno yet, and nobody knew it was. All that special recent disco stuff. So I think,
Well, that's interesting though, because a lot of the proto music people don't understand it yet. They make it and they go, "Whoa!" Like it's out in the open, and it can create all sorts of wonderful things. That's really interesting. But it's hard, you get in that rabbit hole of like, oh, this is like early this and this is early that. Like, you can get a bit sucked into that. But in a way, there's no point trying to keep up with modern styles and whatnot, as long as you're open to new things and you're not just in this like shell, comfortable warm shell that I always go to. I feel like. Sorry.
I'm sure it's open on the screen. It was just really annoying. Carry on. Sorry. There's no answer, but there's no right or wrong answer to any of that.
I feel that's what it is. All generations do. Even the Romans, pastiching the ancient Greeks. It's basically what it is, isn't it? Even at Swim Deep concerts, we kind of have that like early 90s sound, which is kind of, there's some influences which we all, I don't know, there's like some strange that we all listen to, and when it comes together, the production can be quite 90s. And then you get, you see people in the crowd with like bucket hats on and like baggy clothes, but that's quite fashionable now. You see people wearing like 90s clothes now. Funny,
yeah,
though,
people aren't going thinking, oh, I love that 90s band, I want to go and pretend to be 90s. And it's more just culture on masses doing that for some reason anyway.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of meshing in certain ways. Yeah. I mean, I hear it on Radio 1 a lot. You know, a group will come to I was trying to get the early 90s feel. It'd be like, well, of course you are, because we all just subconsciously are.
Of that age, I guess. It's strange you never really thought about it when you were younger, though, that it would come back like that.
Yeah, although you'd have a feeling about it that was quite warm and crunchy and nice. But doesn't,
Yeah, I mean, I love it. Idol 65, so that's my, you know, what's the word? My go-to, not go-to. Secret biscuit.
My last question.
I'm sorry, one more point. In some ways, trying to make pop music now is a challenge because personally, I don't really listen to pop unless it's like, I don't know, you like in a taxi or something. I do like some of it, although I'm trying it. Like usually, it ends up sounding like Prince or something, or like early '80s.
Yeah.
So I can't really help that. Not that I'm good as Prince, but I think that's kind of popular now, isn't it? That's come back, like that sort of Prince.
Yeah, a kind of lot of variation on sort of funk and sort of comes to the forefront.
Yeah.
What's on the immediate horizon? Yeah, what's on the lockdown horizon? What's going to happen after your when you're set free and the walls come down and they're playing 99 Lux Balloons? How are you gonna cope with being able to?
I mean, absolutely no idea. My only income is from live music, so that's gone for at least a year. Hopefully, with Swim Deep, we probably made about a record or two, so hopefully that gets put out soon. Try and set up more shows with that.
Yeah.
And so I might be going to Australia this summer, so.
It was a Harry Styles gig that got cancelled. So you guys are gonna play with Harry Styles.
Next March, it's been scheduled to. There's a Birmingham festival we're meant to play, and that's now next May. I mean, I can't even fathom how far away that is, but it's good that they've been rescheduled. I mean, a lot of things have just been, they've chucked it into next year, and let's just, think about it later. Like I say, it might be mad when it comes back. We might get tons of bookings. I don't know what will happen next year. Hopefully, just play live for the whole of the year. Yeah. I mean, I have no idea. And I'll make a solo album this year or something.
I just see everybody partying extra hard once it's over and getting a bit crazy for a bit. And everybody trying to pretend it's 1989. I think.
Yeah. I can't say that being a good thing though. It's probably going to be a second wave or a third wave or something, isn't it?
Yeah, there'll be the new wave of cases and obviously all the helpless and fatalities, death. But yeah, it's kind of very touching and worrying that because we haven't tested everybody, there's no way of knowing. Yeah, so who knows? But, yeah.
I mean, this is especially hard on young people. Also because the infections, somewhere the scientists said that infections for young people are so low, it's unbelievable. Even getting it. and passing it on is like astoundingly low. I think it's, I mean, if you're over 90, I think it's, and if you're under 20 compared to if you're over 90, it's 10,000 times more likely to get it. 90.
Really?
And like children, who knows what it would be like to be at school right now. Luckily, you know, I've travelled and played shows, just about got the album out on time. That you know, you see, there's a few bands where like the album's going to come out March 2020, and it's like they're like, we got these shows, and then bang, it's
That was a lot of
they can't sell their record.
That was so many artists, so many big artists that had their stuff coming out.
March, April's a very busy time for releases. Yeah, and that's, you know, main income, playing shows. I saw a few bands there, but it's like halfway through their tour, they just had to, like Orioles, they like went out to America and played at one show, and then everything else got cancelled. They did the UK tour, one show in America.
Yeah, it must have been quite horrible to have to just cut everything. Sorry, I think we're getting quite low on bit rate, aren't we? It's getting quite awkward. And this, the internet is getting quite like slowed down.
You've been bit late for a while, wouldn't?
But yeah, you might be going to Australia.
Yeah, I sent my visa off today with a ridiculous amount of personal questions. You're only allowed to put 10 megabytes into the folder, and it asked all these things, and I had 5 gigabytes. So I had to put them as JPEGs at the smallest like file size I could possibly do, and that wouldn't even fit in all. So a third of the information I wasn't even able to put in, so I don't know if I'll even get it. But we'll see in about 2 days, see what happens. If they'll let me in. And then I get forced quarantine in a hotel that's run by the army, where they send you meals.
That's cool.
Maybe I'll make my album then. 2 weeks by myself in a hotel.
Get the boys involved. Get the boys. You could. Oh, how's he going? Well, folks, it looks like that's a wrap.